So this is Mike again. I wanted to record another video with some of the ideas that I had for additional content. And what I did is I actually combined two ideas. The first one is color coding various cases in a Russian text. And the second idea is translating into English basically directly, very literally, so it doesn't sound like free flowing English or like normal English, but it gives you an idea of what the constructions are like in Russian. So, what I did is I chose a couple of paragraphs from the book Hod Karalevi, and this is the Queen's Gambit basically in Russian. And so, before I get started, it's a relatively short text. Um, but I want to explain what I've done with the color coding here. I've put the various cases, excluding the nominative case, because that one doesn't really need to be notated. So I've got the prepositional, accusative, genitive, dative, and instrumental cases, everything but the nominative case. And in green, I've put prepositional constructions. In yellow, accusative. This turquoise color is genitive, and this reddish color dative, and then finally purple kind of violet color is the instrumental case. So what I'm wanting to do here is show you how these cases pop up within the Russian text, because I think a lot of beginners don't really know when certain case is being used. And hopefully I can kind of explain why the endings are the way that they are and so forth, how those cases are being used. And then also we just want to look at the various constructions in Russian and how those might sound in English, to just give you a better idea of what the Russian flow of language or construction would sound like in English, to give you I don't know, a concept of not necessarily translating in your head while you're speaking, but being able to understand those constructions from the point of view of English. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. Mr. Ferguson раздавал таблетки в маленьких бумажных стаканчиках. And this would be translated as Mr. Ferguson gave out tablets in small paper cups. Pretty straightforward translation into English. Here you've got the green encoded маленьких бумажных стаканчиках. And so this is color coded in green. It is the prepositional case. And so this is talking about the tablets being inside these small little cups. And prepositional here deals with location. Помимо зеленой, что для утмерения, там лежали еще оранжевая и коричневая для укрепления организма. So the translation here, besides the green, or you could say the green ones, those that were for pacification, there laid also the orange and brown ones for strengthening of the organism. So, in terms of the meaning here, you don't have to repeat the word tabletki. You can basically just say, besides the green ones, for example, which is implied. And then also interesting is this last word, organism. And it's interesting because in English we might say that something is good for the body or bad for the body or strengthens the body. But in Russian, when they talk about the body in that sense, like the functioning body and how it's doing, they say organism or organism instead of the body. And you should also note here that all of these highlights are turquoise, meaning that these are all in the genitive case. So помимо is the trigger word, which basically means besides. So besides uh, zelonoi. So besides the green one, and toi, basically from the word tie or those, and it turns into toy. Uh, and actually, probably better would be to say from the word ta, because ta would be the feminine, which in the instrumental case would turn into toy. So actually, it's more like besides the green one and that one for pacification. So dla basically means you need to use the genitive case usmerenye, and that changes to usmerenia because it's in the genitive case. And then at the end, we also have another dla construction, ukreplenia. The original or nominative version would be ukreplenia organisma. So it's for the strengthening of the organism. So both of those are in the genitive case. So ukreplenie turns into ukreplenia. Organism turns into organisma. Organism is a masculine noun, and so in order to make it into the genitive, you would need organisma. Окей, чтобы получить свою порцию, дети должны были выстраиваться в очередь. Okay, so in order to receive one's portion, children were to line up in line. So yeah, that sounds very strange in English, but that's the Russian construction translated literally. Um, so they must have been basically. So in order to get this past construction of something that's obligatory or must have been done, you would say должны были. This is in the plural because должны были. You say я должен был, which would be I had to, I must have been, or something along those lines. So the были just puts it into the past tense, basically. So in terms of the cases here, свою порцию, it's encoded in yellow, and that is the word comes from porția, so it must in the accusative be changed to porțiu, and свою, one's own portion. В Okay, so this one is not colored. You might think because there's v here that it might be prepositional, but it's not. It's actually a accusative because they're talking about to line up into a line. So this is actually used like a verb of motion where you use the accusative case after выстраиваться, like to get into line, basically. So if it were in the prepositional, it would be в очереди, but because it's in the accusative, it's just в очередь, which is, it looks just like the nominative version, but it's actually in the accusative case here, even though you can't necessarily tell by the change in spelling because there is no change in spelling. Okay, самой высокой в очереди была чернокожая кожая Jolene. Ей уже исполнилось 12. Okay, so this one's very interesting. Okay, so the I'll translate it first. Very most tall in line was black-skinned Jolene. For her, already fulfilled 12. So there's a lot that's implied here. If you were to flesh that out into English, it would be the tallest girl in line uh, was how do we say this? Black Jolene, basically. Jolene, who was black, and she had already turned 12 years old. And so now, why isn't it Samaya Vysokaya Jolene? Because she's feminine, she's female. Samaya Vysokaya here is already turned into the instrumental case, and that is because it's used with the verb была. So when you say something was or some way or will be some way, very often the instrumental case is being used. So that's why it's in the form that it's in, because it goes with была. So you could say черная кожная Jolene была самой высокой в очереди. And that might be a little clearer that way. Очереди, here, очереди is in the prepositional case, which is why it's coded in green. And you can see очередь above in yellow, where that's the accusative case and it doesn't change, but in the prepositional change, очереди, it does. So after that, we have ей уже исполнилось 12. So ей is indicative of the dative case, meaning for her, she already fulfilled or turned 12. So whenever you're talking about age, like I'm 51, мне 51 год. So, like, literally, that would be for me, I am 51 years old or something along those lines. So 51 years for me. And that's just the way the construction works in Russian. So it's just something that you have to get used to. So whenever you're talking about age specifically. Okay. На второй день в приюте Бет оказалась витаминной вереницы прямо за ней. Тогда Джолин вдруг обернулась и хмурно взглянула сверху вниз. Okay, so на второй день. Na can often mean prepositional case is going to follow, but as we learned with v, oftentimes it can be the accusative case. So most often when we use time constructions, then it's actually in the accusative case. So here, that's actually the accusative case. Приюте, now that is definitely the prepositional case because we're talking about location. Where did it happen? In the orphanage. Бет оказалась, she turned out or wound up in, shall we say, in the vitamin line. Now, verenice, that means like a string. So I believe the word here is probably verenica, but because it would be, the endings would be turned into the prepositional endings, you would have oy at the end of the adjective and ye at the end of the noun. And then we have prямо за ней. So za in this context means behind. And whenever you're talking about on top of, above, in front of, behind, then you have to use the instrumental case. Ней here is actually the instrumental case. Not sure if I actually translated this, but on second day, and I'm leaving out things like articles because they just don't exist in Russian, to give you just a better sense for the flow of the language. On second day in Orphanage, Beth wound up in, occasionally I'll stick in an article, in the vitamin line right behind her. Then Jolene immediately, I've got a typo here, immediately turned around and scowlingly, which I don't believe that word actually exists in English, but chmurna is an adverb, and it basically means like with a scowl. So if you were to literally translate, it would be something like scowlingly looked her up and down. Sverhu vniz. So like from the top to the bottom, basically. And I wouldn't be surprised if sverhu vniz, that vniz might be in the accusative case, but I'm not entirely confident about that, so I didn't encode anything there. А ты настоящая сирота или так ублюдочная? Бет не знала, что ответить. Ей сделалось страшно. Okay, so, and you are a real orphan, uh, so, or a bastard, basically. Uh, Ублюдочная can be translated as bastard, basically. And Beth didn't know what to answer, but for her, it made scary. So this is a very strange construction when you try to translate it into English. But whenever in Russian you talk about like a state of mind or how you're feeling, I can say, for example, is something scary for me, мне страшно, which could be translated as for me, scary. So scary for me. It's scary for me. So when, here, for example, they'll just say "ей страшно," but "сделалось" here it just increases the meaning by saying what made it. It made the situation scary for her. Hopefully that makes sense. Они стояли в самом хвосте очереди. Хвосте. I think I had the stress on that not quite right. И нужно было ждать, пока им не позволят подойти к окошку в двери аптеки, за которым расположился мистер Фергюсон. Okay, so there's a lot of different colors in there. Let me translate it first. They stood at the very tail end of the line, and necessary was to wait, and it was necessary to wait, while for them not they allowed to approach the window in the door of the pharmacy at which located Mr. Ferguson. Okay, in English, that's really butchered English, but that's the direct meaning of those words. And so, for example, позволят, that means they allow. So we don't conjugate verbs in the same way in English as verbs are conjugated in Russian. So whenever we see this word позволят or позволят, it means they allow and not just to allow, for example. В самом хвосте. Okay, so that is notated here as prepositional, which basically means at the very tail end. Now, очереди, I believe here is in the genitive case. So at the very tail end, and then changing to genitive, this ofness idea of the line at the very end. So where? At the very end of what? Of the line. So that's notated in turquoise. И нужно было ждать, пока им. Okay, so we have им is the dative version of for them. И позволять подойти к окошку. Okay, to the window. So окно is the word for window, right? But there are these diminutives in Russian. Окошко basically can mean like a small little window. So here it's probably окошек or something like that. Honestly, I'm not quite sure, but this is the dative form. So she's approaching the window. So k here basically means towards, окошко towards the window. В двери. Okay, so this is in the door of the pharmacy. So аптеки is in, so двери is in the prepositional case, while аптека is the basic word here, and it changes to аптеки for the genitive case. За которым, okay, so за means behind or at, but it's location, and this is not location in the sense of prepositional. It's location za where they use the instrumental case. Zakatorim, that's why that's in the instrumental case. So after which um, was located Mr. Ferguson. Moving on. Бет слышала, как мать называла ублюдочной травью. Тварью. Ублюдочной тварью. Okay. So this basically means like a bastard creature. But what I wanted to point out here is that it's in purple because when you call something in Russian, then very often it's turned into the instrumental case. So when you consider something to be something, or you call something as something, or when something seems like something, uh, hopefully I'm getting my point across, then you put it into the instrumental case because you're talking about it being something. And so this is the kind of the connective tissue between when you would use the instrumental case when something was something or will be something, or it's considered to be something, or it seems to be something. So whenever you're using this notion of to be, then you need to use the instrumental case, and that's what's being used here. And because it's feminine, this is the way it's declined. So atsa here we comes from atietz. So this would be actually the accusative case because they called him this something, this bastardly creature, basically. But понятия не имела, что это означает. That means that Beth had no idea what that means. Понятия is actually this way of saying that it didn't exist. It's kind of like у меня нет чего-то, like I don't have something. She doesn't have any concept of what it means. And so panyatiya comes from the word panyatiye. And panyatiya is the form in which it's put when it's in the genitive case. Okay, so again, I'll just read the direct translation. And again, it's kind of nonsense in English, but you can reform the words in your mind to get the actual meaning of the text. Beth had heard how mother called bastard creature father, but concept she didn't have what it means. So you can get that. Beth had heard how her mother had called her father a bastard creature, but she had no concept of what it meant. Тебя как зовут, девочка? Спросила Jolene. So here it's how do they call you, girl? Asked Jolene. So whenever I say like my name is Mike, I don't say moje imię Mike. I say they call me Mike. So in the way that I would say that is меня зовут Mike. And here it's so whoever is being called something has to be in the accusative case. So it's indicated in yellow. Тебя как зовут. So тебя here is the accusative case. And she answers with her name, Beth. Твоя мама умерла. С папой что? Your mama died, and with father, what? So, с папой basically just means with your father. So what happened with your father? And that's the instrumental case, so it's color-coded that way. Бет молча смотрела на нее. So she silently looked at her. So not нее, that's the accusative case. Слова мама и умерла звучали I'm having trouble with the pronunciation here. Невыносимо. So the words mama and died, together sounded unbearable to her. Ей хотелось убежать, но бежать было некуда. So ей хотелось, this is again dative. So we were talking about how the dative is often used with terms of expression for how I'm feeling. Мне плохо, мне ужасно, мне страшно. So here, ей хотелось. So there was a desire for her to run away, to escape, basically. And so that's basically what it means. Is for her, she wanted to run away, um, but there was nowhere to run. So, and here this interesting nikuda is not nikuda. You can say like, "There's nowhere to go." I have nowhere to go. Nikuda. Uh, but there's this transition where you can use instead of you use ye. Niekuda means completely nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Um, there's more that could be said about that, but I think that's enough for now. Твои родаки умерли в голосе Джолин даже проскользнуло сочувствие, да? Okay, so your parents died, and in the voice of Jolene, even slipped through empathy. Um, so vgolase, so in her voice. Where is it located? In her voice. Но бед так и не нашла, что сказать или сделать. Okay, so что we often see as just, a normal word that maybe is in the nominative case, but here she didn't find something or anything. But Beth son didn't find what to say or to do. So you could also translate it as anything to say or do. But что in this context is actually used in the accusative case because нашла что? Well, here even the word что is being used, so accusative. Просто стояла в очереди, перепуганная и ждала таблетку. Okay, so just two cases left. The очереди, hopefully you figured out by now that that's in the prepositional case. Where was she standing? She was standing in the line. She was frightened and she was waiting for her tablet. So she waited for what? So ждала что? So this is the accusative case. Tabletka is feminine, and so even for inanimate feminine nouns, as opposed to inanimate masculine nouns, which don't change, the feminine nouns typically do, unless they end in a soft sign. So tabletka changes to tabletku. Okay, so I'm going to put this file up on Google Docs, and I will put a link in the description where you can go check it out and review it for yourself. Hopefully you guys found this exercise helpful, and I'd especially like to hear from some of you guys who are relatively new to learning Russian, and hear whether this type of exercise is helpful for you or not. All right, that's all for today. Thanks, guys. See you next time.